I don't take Honda Civics to make them into Ferraris. I take Ferraris to make them into F1s. That's just my clientele. That's perfectly okay. But even those people that are very high levels have doubts.
Hello and welcome back. Welcome to another episode of the Thrive State podcast. It's Dr. V. I am super happy that you are here. I'm super happy that you found this channel. And if you're showing up here for the first time, I hope you get a lot of value from this. For those of you who have been following along and have been with us since our launch in February, thank you. The show is growing. Thank you for sharing it with your family and friends. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for all your comments. And if you haven't already, please, it will continue to allow the show to grow by leaving a 5-star review at ratethispodcast.com/ThriveState. Now, I am super excited for today's interview because it really shows us a story of somebody has overcome quite a feat. Our speaker today and my guest today is actually somebody who grew up with dyslexia, but despite that, reads, I think, a book a day or a book a week, is probably one of the most sought after speakers in the performance circuit. He teaches and coaches CEOs, C-suite executives. He goes into big businesses and really takes people from a Ferrari level to the F1 level. And, when you meet him today, you'll feel his energy. You could feel his positive vibes. And that's what really being in the Thrive State's all about. Because when you start to show up different, when you start to be able to embody a happier, more joyful, more energetic version of yourself, you'll start to notice things change. Because when you feel different, you start to think different, then the things that you start to do are different. And the results that you want in your life, whether it be in your health, in your business, or all those things, is basically all the actions that you take. We are basically the complete summation of our habits. And if we can lock down good habits, we will lock down our ability to have optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And I'm really excited for today's interview because with our guest, he talks about how he overcome dyslexia and how he is now a sought after speaker, coach, being brought into, some of the biggest companies and working with some of the biggest people to get them to the next level. You'll also get tips of how to show up in a peak state, how to reduce stress in your life, all that and much, much more in today's episode. So please stay tuned for it. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Christopher Dedeyan, who is a professional speaker and peak performance business and life coach who actually helps entrepreneurs, leaders, and employees alike manage stress, increase productivity, and have more energy. He always gets his message across in a humoristic, charming, energetic, and as you'll see today, in a very, very passionate way. He's developed his entrepreneurial skills and communication skills during the first 5 years when he built and ran a real estate brokerage company. During that time, Christopher noticed that he could actually help his colleagues with self-development by incorporating new rituals and habits in their lives that help them not only in their businesses, but in their personal lives as well. You're going to feel his energy. This guy is awesome. You're going to love this interview. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this interview with myself and Christopher Dedeyan. My man, Chris Dedeyan, welcome to the Thrive State podcast, brother.
Ian, thank you very much for having me. I know this is going to be a great conversation. Just by feeling your energy, feeling my energy is going to be freaking magnetic. I love it.
I feel you there. I mean, you're somebody, I go under your social. And for those people who are not familiar, I definitely say, check this guy out because, in every video, in every post, people could feel you. And I definitely want to get how you get into that state. Were you born this way or what you do? But before we get there, we play this game called 5 to Thrive. So there are 5 questions. Each answer is going to be less than 30 seconds long. And we might get into some of those questions a little bit deeper later on. Each question is worth 1,000 points and I am the judge. All right. So here we go. Question number 1. Are you ready to play 5 to Thrive?
Yes, and I better get 5,000 points. So I'm going for it. I like it. We're competing here.
Here we go. Question number 1. What was your most favorite activity as a child?
Playing sports, 100%.
Which sport?
So I'm highlight genetic. So anything that was just running around did it for me. But my first sport was soccer. So that will 100% be soccer.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. That's 1,000 points.
There we
Number
go.
2, what was the most challenging period of your life?
Great question. I think is at 8 years old, being diagnosed with dyslexia, trying to figure out how that went. And that throughout my whole young adult life was very much predominantly there. Still something you work with, deal with, but today it's definitely one of my biggest advantages. So I would say that process of being diagnosed with dyslexia and figuring it out.
Amazing. I definitely want to find out how that struggle turned into your gift a little bit later. Number 3, what are you most proud of?
Great question. What am I most proud of? Honestly, I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of the man that I've became, that I am very philanthropy driven. I'm very authentic. I love the people I work with. So honestly, just proud of the people I'm around. I'm proud of who I've became. And that sounds a bit cocky, but it alludes to a lot the circle that I have. So it alludes to my parents. If I'm the person that I am, it means I have great parents, great sister, and so on. So it's more reflective to who's around me.
Okay, sounds beautiful. Number 4, you being a peak performance coach and speaker and all that, what is your favorite self-care or biohack?
Understanding the biochemistry of your brain. If you understand the biochemistry of your brain and your body, you'll be able to utilize it to your advantage, and then everything will make sense, from all the things that you hear from, like the law of manifestation, from what time to wake up. Like you have to understand your body. Once you understand that, you're not fighting against the current, you're going with it, and then you succeed so much faster. Yeah.
Sounds great. So far, 4,000 points. Will he reach 5,000? The last question is, how would you like to be remembered?
How would I want to be remembered? Honestly, it could be this grandiose thing, but I think my legacy is going to be remembered with those one-on-one conversations, with that in-depth in person. So I would like to be remembered as somebody that is authentic, present, and somebody that was there to help in that one-on-one conversation, so much more than the grandiose things that I have accomplished or I am thriving to accomplish in the future.
Oh, beautiful. And I hope that, I know I'm going to remember, this is the first time we actually chatting, you and I, but I could tell that you're somebody with great energy that I want to get to know a little bit deeper. And so we will go a little bit deeper. Chris Dedeyan, I had guessed you were from Armenia, but you currently live in Quebec. Tell us how, at what age did you come over? Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
So I love that. We're going to jump into that, but just be sure. Did I get my last 1,000 points? Did I get 5,000 points?
All right, you got 5,000 points. You win dinner with me when you're in LA.
Let's go. Let's go. Game show. I won. All right, beautiful. I didn't see I'm slightly competitive, so I had to know. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that. I'm actually born and raised. My sister and I are born and raised in Montreal. Both my parents are Armenian descent, immigrated to Canada. My father was born in Armenia. My mother was Armenian, born in Lebanon. And them throughout the whole process of trying to figure out how to get to Canada and North America. As you potentially know the story of the Armenian genocide and all that aspect that happened in early 1900s, 1915 to be exact. So my parents went through hell and back in a certain sense. My father was born in Armenia, which back in the day was a communist country. So he ran away from communism. And my mother, born in Lebanon, there was always the Lebanese war, and she was there because of the genocide. Then my grandfather had a job in Africa, in Ghana. And then from there was civil war. So he ran to United States, Connecticut. And then from there, my mom actually met my father at a wedding and they got married over here. So their whole journey and story from like that immigrant background and struggling is so present in our lives. And you know what? It's a big part of why I'm successful, to be quite honest. Like every single day, they've told us these stories and it. So you kind of understand how lucky and grateful and blessed that we are to be in North America and to have the opportunities that we have, because a lot of people would love to be in our shoes. So that's why I push so much. So that's what I would speak to that.
Oh, yeah. Me being an immigrant myself, I could definitely, empathize. So let me ask you, you grew up in Montreal?
Yes.
Now, tell me about growing up in Montreal. Were there a lot of Armenians around? Were you considered a minority? Did you feel like you fit in?
So Awesome question. So I do have a very decent community in Montreal, not to the same likes as Glendale, to be quite honest, but we're still quite like, it's not like unnormal to see Armenian people on the street or talk and all that stuff, especially when you're like in the sectors where the Armenians live in itself.
Mhm.
So we didn't feel outsider in that sense. But me personally, if I ever felt outsider, I've always been an outsider. Like even with the Armenian community, I've been outsider. When I went to the French community, I was Armenian. So it's, that immigrant life, and you know it very well, Kien. Like, I mean, that ideology is always present there. But once again, I see it as a positive more than anything else.
Now, did you see it as a positive growing up as a child?
Okay.
Because
So
I could tell you for myself that
please
I
do.
didn't like the skin I was in. I wanted to be white. I wanted to be more American. I didn't like the immigrant identity that I had when I was a kid. And I thought, I tried to just hide this portion that I didn't feel like I was enough. So that was my, growing up. How did you feel? Did you feel very fortunate at all times, or did you feel,
I love that you just shared that with us. And thank you very much, because that reality is a reality that a lot of immigrants, young immigrants have, especially like you said, immigrating to North America, trying to fit in, be the same, especially when you're young, you try to be like everybody else. But in my scenario, because I was dyslexic and figured out at a young age, I had so much more of a bearing thing over me that I was trying to hide and trying to figure out. So the immigrant thing never came into light to me in like, oh my God, I'm an immigrant. It was more like, holy shit, I'm dyslexic. I can't read. Let me try to figure out this education system and not let people figure out that I can't read, because they'll associate that to intelligence. So because of that, I've never thought of that in itself. And it's very interesting. I've never actually had that cognitive conversation. So thank you for bringing that up. I'm definitely going to ask my sister if she's felt that in the past.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. So at what point was your earliest memory of, maybe, having dyslexia?
So my earliest memory would be around the age of 8. And how that happened essentially is that my parents used to compare me to my sister, which she's 2 years older. And they used to say, he's doing the same effort and he's not reading to the same level as her when he was her age. So they got me tested. And finally, at 8 years old, I got diagnosed with dyslexia. And Kien, if you permit, I'll actually give you the whole arc of my relationship with dyslexia and how I ended up being a professional speaker, because it's so intertwined.
Yeah.
So at 8 years old, my parents come tell me, Chris, we're going to take you out of the school that you are in right now in the middle of the school year, and you're going to go to a specialized school called Vanguard, which is a school for students with learning disabilities in the greater region of Montreal. Now, 8 years old, Kien, all I understand is I'm losing my friends and I'm going to a special school. I don't want that. That's where that anxiety came into play. Like, hey, that's what it was like. Wait a minute, what's happening? My life kind of got shooken up at 8 years old. Now, once I get to that school, first thing I realized, Kien, is that there are hundreds of kids like me. So I'm not alone. Not only that, now there are the specialists, there is the teachers, the speech therapists that are giving me the proper tools and methodology to succeed as a dyslexic. Now, as the years went along, I started succeeding quite well in that system and even in the education system. At the end of my high school years, the question, like everybody, is like, hey, what do you want to be? You decide to become a very successful doctor and all that aspect. And you just, you went into that. I was looking into potentially being a lawyer. I'm like, hey, I like wearing nice suits. I like talking. I'm like, let's go. As I was studying to like look into what it takes to be a lawyer, I realized that more than 85% of the job is reading and writing. I'm like, I'm dyslexic. So for people who don't know dyslexia, it's a learning disability. It has to do with the reading and writing. So it takes me 5 times more effort to read than somebody that doesn't have dyslexia. So at that point, Kien, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, let me find a job that doesn't have a lot of reading and writing. So what came about to me and really attracted me was a fireman. I'm like, all right, that's cool. The boys, the fire truck, helping others. Like I've always been helping driven. So I'm like, yeah, let's go into that. As I go into that field, it takes a little while to get into it and go into the field, start working at Pratt & Whitney Canada, which is an airplane company that does airplane motors. And I was becoming an industrial fireman. Kien, I realized that this wasn't my life's purpose. There was something missing. I realized through that thought process, my whole life was preparing me to be an entrepreneur. When teachers used to come into the classroom and say, kids, put yourself in teams, even before I finished the word 3, I had my head up. I'm like, who reads the best? Who writes the best? Let me put a team together. Let me delegate the work. That's delegation 101, entrepreneurship. When I was in college and I was failing, I used to go see the professor afterwards. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant, so that I could boost my grade up. That's freaking negotiation 101. All these things that were preparing me to be an entrepreneur. So then once I understood this, I'm like, you know what? Let me go into this entrepreneur world. I decided to become a real estate broker, which I love real estate, still in the industry as an investor, but not as a broker anymore, obviously. So that process, going through it, and anybody that just an entrepreneur knows that it takes some time. I started succeeding. It took some time to get there, but I started succeeding. At a certain point, Kien, my speech therapist that used to follow me in high school called me up to ask me a question about real estate. And at that point, I had, as you're seeing, I could go on rants until tomorrow morning. I went on a rant. I'm like, yo, it's going great. I'm successful. The car, the money, my early 20s, the whole nine. And then she's like, I'm the keynote speaker at this event put together by the Learning Disability Institute of Quebec. I would love for you to come and talk about you being a successful dyslexic entrepreneur. I'm like, I would love that. Kien, that same evening, she sends me an email in the subject letter in big caps. It's written, Chris, I don't think you should do this speech, as there's still a lot of people that have a negative misconception of what is dyslexia, and you might lose some clients. Now, I know that she was coming from a place of love, but that same email, I wrote her back and I said, I'll call you Monday, because that was Friday evening. And I'm like, we'll talk about it. Monday rolls around. I'm like, listen, Bridget, I'm like, I have to do this speech. The reason why is if I'm not doing it, I'm not helping the kids that are in the school benches right now. I'm not helping the next generation. I'm not helping my future kids because this is something hereditary. I would be fake. I'm not somebody fake. And I'm like, if there is somebody that doesn't want to work with me because I'm dyslexic, those are not clients I want to work with. She's like, oh my God, yes, 100%. I'm on the same page as you. I just wanted to come from you. I'm like, beautiful. Now I'm like, how many people are going to be at this event? She's like, about 200. Kien, I walk into this event. Open the door, look left and right. There isn't 200 people. It's more like 1,000 people. Now, consider, I've never given a speech in my life. I am sweating. My heart is beating. People are going on stage, doctors like you, PhDs. I'm like, what am I doing here? And then finally, when I get on stage, it's like this magical moment happens of like, my whole life has been preparing me for that. And that aspect of me being on stage was like the aha moment of like, this is what I have to do for the rest of my life as a speaker and a coach. And then I transitioned my whole business towards that. Everybody thought it was crazy, but I transitioned it. And now this is what I do full time. So I give you a little rant there, but it kind of gives you the whole arc of how my dyslexia was, what I understood, and where I became today as a speaker and coach.
That's amazing. Sometimes those moments really kind of define who you are. And did you, when you were up there and kind of giving that speech, did you like, okay, yeah, this is who I am and this is who I want to become? Is this speaker and coach then?
In a sense, yes. Like at that moment, I knew there was something special that was happening. I wasn't able to pinpoint it, but I specifically knew that I'm like, oh, wow, this is life-changing. And then God bless, I was lucky enough to have my parents there, and my sister, my brother-in-law, and people. And then as soon as I got off stage, like there was a lineup of people in front of me, thanking me, asking me for, more advice, follow-ups, all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is completely different. So much so, Kien, that at that point, it had been 2 weeks that I hired my first ever coach, which is actually a coach that still follows me. Mm-hmm. And I had hired him for him to make me a peak performing real estate broker. And then once he saw this speech, and this speech was in French, and this man is actually from Vancouver, so doesn't speak a lick of French, watched the whole speech. And he's like, Chris, he's like, you hired me for you to become a top end broker. He's like, that's not what we're going to do. You're going to become a world-class international speaker. And I'm like, Trevor, what are you talking about? I'm like, can you even make a living at it? So I had no idea what the industry was. Like I was successful in what I was doing. He's like, yeah, not only are you going to make a living out of it, he's like, you're going to be one of the best ones in the industry.
Oh, amazing.
So then
is this Trevor McGregor?
Yes, you know him?
I know Trevor McGregor.
What?
I mean,
what, my brother, yo?
There's the Tony world. I mean, he recently did something with a buddy of mine, Dinesh Mawani. I don't know if you know him.
Yes, I know Dinesh too.
Oh, yeah. He and I
we're in the same circles. What's happening, bro?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Dinesh is getting muscles because of me now. Anyway, but what a small world. So let me ask you something. You crush your first speech. And I'm only asking you this. I mean, there's a part of me that feels like I want to do more speaking and media and things like that, but I get terrified. A lot of people see me on screen, the reels, and like, wow, Kien, you're a natural. I don't feel that way. I feel like, I'm nervous and I don't want to mess up going there. Was there a arc for you? Did you crush that speech and were you like, how am I going to do this again? Or did it just constantly build and you're like, man, you know what? I've created my whole life was meant for this. And you never really look back and you never really have those nerves.
Okay, so I love that question. So it comes in two parts. I truly do believe certain people have certain talents that are innate or was developed because of how you grew up and so on the case.
Yeah.
For me, like I said, I think I became an eloquent speaker just because of the education system. Like I said, because I couldn't necessarily read at a high level, when I was in school, I'm like, I had to be able to express myself in a way that the teacher sees, oh, wait a minute, this kid's smart. So that's why that was cultivated. Now, once I went on stage the first time, then I noticed that, oh, wait a minute. I'm like, okay, I'm really good at this. I didn't sit on my laurels. I have been going in depth into speaking and how to develop the craft because I'm truly in love with this. So 100%, one, there's that talent. Second of all, I live and breathe this. Like I study it. I look at it. I look at the masters. I look at other industries, what I can pick up. I practice it. I do podcasts. I do YouTube videos. That's how it really gets developed, just like anything else, essentially.
This episode of the Thrive State podcast is brought to you by the Thrive State Accelerator. The Thrive State Accelerator is actually a home course that I developed using the exact same techniques I work with my celebrity clients, CEOs, and executives on how to get them to the Thrive State. The Thrive State Accelerator teaches you how to master your 7 bioenergetic elements. That's sleep, nutrition, movement, stress and emotional mastery, relationships, our thoughts and mindset, as well as purpose. In this Thrive State Accelerator, you're also going to get a bonus module on optimization. That's how I talk about supplementation, peptides, all the optimization techniques I use with my clients to get them to the Thrive State. Now, for some of you who are just joining us for the first time, you guys might be wondering, what is the Thrive State? Well, the Thrive State is actually the energy, the epigenetic environment we give to ourselves, telling our DNA how to act and how to respond. And if we want optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, if we can master these 7 bioenergetic elements, our ability to have those 3 things that we just said, optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, is at its greatest. And it also prevents you from getting chronic symptoms like brain fog, being overweight, feeling sluggish, acne, pain, all these chronic symptoms, as well as preventing you from getting chronic disease. So getting to that Thrive State is really getting to that state to master being that very best version of yourself so you could show up for you, for your family, for your business, everything that's important to you. So go ahead, check it out right now at kienvu.com/accelerator and use coupon code podcast25 for 25% off. Now back to the podcast.
I mean, right now you're so fortunate to work with, really the top people, C-suite executives, CEOs, things like that, really getting them to the next level. And I just see the energy and the positivity that's in you now. So the question is, was Chris born this way? Or are there things that he's put into his day, his routine, that has changed this habit of showing up in peak state? Is it a combination of both? But how do you show up as this happy guy with this energy that's infectious and magnetic?
And
I just want to draw myself towards the screen here.
Kien, first of all, I appreciate that, brother. Really appreciate those kind words. To be quite honest, actually, my mom used to say that I've always been a smiley kid. But besides that, it's 100% very, very, very methodically chosen. The reason why I'm happy is because I decided I wanted to be happy yesterday. It's as simple as that. And then I put the systems and processes in place to be happy. So that's exactly like you're talking about rituals. Like I wake up at 4 a.m. every single day and have a specific things that I do to put myself in peak states. So then when I am presenting myself in front of my clients, in front of speeches, in front of amazing people like you, connecting on podcasts, so on and so forth, I'm already at this high level of standard. But this is only a byproduct of your habits and rituals. So that's the way I would speak to that.
Oh, beautiful. I mean, it's so great, to have people know and hear that, because, I feel like stress, distraction, and not being in natural states of joy really kind of hold some people back. And they're like, okay, well, I mean, certain people have, a certain life, which is why they're happy. So let's walk and dive into some of those things that you do, because you're letting people know it might not be something you have innately, but if you could start building into the habits, you could start to cultivate that in yourself.
100% you could cultivate it. And that's the difference between a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. That's the difference between having a locus of control towards not a locus of control. Understand understanding that you do have these powers to control it. And a lot of this starts with your verbiage, right? What are you telling yourself? Like you said, if you're somebody that's somewhat negative, thinking you can't do this or this, that, and the other, that's what you're going to attract. Towards if you decide like, hey, you know what, I'm going to be smiling, I'm going to be like this, I'm going to be like that, the energy and frequency that's going to bring that, it's going to be exactly what you're manifesting. This is 100% real. We're not even talking about like, oh, ooh la la manifestation.
Yeah.
As your physician, like we could legit get into the biochemistry side of things to really show what is happening and why it happens when you think positive, when you smile, that you have this energy, this actually thing that like is magnetic in itself. So 100%.
Yeah. So let's put that into maybe a few easy action items for somebody who doesn't normally wake up that way and they need external things that kind of fill them up. What are some of the things that you do that could be easily applied that could, bring and boost people's moods a little bit more?
I love that. So
again, when you feel different, you think different, then you do start different things, and then your life will be completely different. Correct? You know
it. That's exactly the pattern, right? You know it. If you're doing exactly the same thing and expecting a different result, then you're crazy. Just like, I paraphrase over here, like Albert Einstein phrase, but what you're saying is actually very accurate here. So I could obviously go into like my full step-by-step 4 a.m. routine until what I do, but here are the top 3 things that I would suggest people to really do at a high level. Number 1 is a gratitude practice. There is no physical way that you could do gratitude practice and at the same time be angry, mad, frustrated. If you're living in a position of grace, of blessings, and counting all these things, you are going to get more of that. Number 1 thing that I would say. Number 2 thing I would say is get out of your mind and go into your physical body. That means move every single day. Could go work out, just like you showed me your guns. You're definitely somebody that works out. You could go as simply as on a walk, whatever the case is. You have to have that mind and body connection, which people push away at certain point or don't think it's as necessary, especially in the beginning of their career. Maybe when they just got kids, this, that, like things get busy, but it's really important to cultivate that so you could have that positive energy. And finally, the last thing I would mention is set your intention. High level, peak performing individuals don't set their intention once a year and call it New Year's resolution and I'm good until next year and I'm only going to do it for a couple of weeks. They do it every single day for every single activity. Like Kien, before coming on this show today, I was in back-to-back meetings. Yeah. But in the morning, throughout my 4 a.m. morning ritual, I look at all of my agenda. I look at all of my tasks. What do I have to do? What are my meetings? What are this? What are that? And then when I see, I have this interview, I ask myself, how do I want to show up on this podcast? What kind of energy do I want to transmit? What kind of value do I want to bring to the universe? What kind of ideologies do I want to present? So once I stated already, even before I've done it, then my reticular activating system is putting it in my mind and knows where it's going to go when the time comes. So that's the way I would explain it. Number 1, gratitude. Number 2, get out of your mind, go into your body. And number 3, set your intention for every single activity.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, when you set the intention, you're basically telling your body, priming your body, putting your body into a very specific energy. And I mean, not to get very metaphysical, but the energy you put out and that energy that you're, is the type of energy you're bringing in. So I love that. Now, a lot of people right now, I don't know what it's like in Montreal, but I mean, we've got certain cities in the United States closed down because of COVID. Some people, aren't able to do certain things that they're used to be doing. There's a high level of stress that's out there. Now I know those 3 things that you just stated will be great for stress as well, but do you have things that, you're dealing with CEOs, you're dealing with C-suite executives. I'm sure they're running a lot of stress that's out there. Do you have some practical things that you could share with our audience in terms of how do you start managing some of that?
100%. I love that question. And the 3 things previously that we mentioned, 100% is associated with all of that. Okay. So do those top 3 things. Here are some other tips. If you ever feel you're doing something and you feel anxious, overwhelmed, stressed, whatever the case is, one trick that I have, physically move the environment that you're in from. So if you're in your office, you're feeling that, get up, go outside, go into another office, go outside, go for a walk, whatever the case is. Because when you're staying in that same energy, in that same place, your mind is going to go on these patterns towards when you're moving it, it sees other opportunities. So that's one thing when it comes to leaving stress or whatever the case is, when you're in high level of, in a state of like, oh my God, I can't handle this. One. Second thing, when it comes to being stressed, I have breathing techniques that I utilize at such a high level. Sometimes it's just as simple as, it sounds stupid to say it like this, but it's the honest truth. We forget to breathe. Now, what do I mean by this?
Absolutely.
We're all breathing, subconsciously. That's why we're alive. But doing it consciously in a certain way, such as a box breathing or any other technique that's going to increase the quantity of oxygen within your brain, you're going to feel so much better and you're going to see certain opportunities in a different way. So something that you might see as the end of the world when you're stressed, when you're like overwhelmed, when you're hunched down, oh my God, you're not going to be able to see the solution. But if you take a step back, do a little box breathing, take a 4 breath in, or like four counts breath in, hold it for 4 counts and blow it out for 4, and then repeat that for a couple of times, it changes your biochemistry completely. And finally, talking about your physiology, this is something that it's been out there for several years now. Changing your physical body and putting it in power postures will 100% change the psychology and the biochemistry of your brain and secrete positive secretions such as serotonin and beyond. One example, standing up, doing the superwoman position. Another example, if you're angry, sad, force yourself to smile for 60 seconds. Then your body will not know the difference between you being happy or sad. It'll start being like, oh my God, he's smiling for 60 seconds. Let me send him a lot of happy energy because he's smiling. When he smiles, those 34 muscles in your face start activating the same way. So your body associates that. And if you're telling me you're really, really depressed or really stressed, you can't do that. What do? Take a pen, put it in your mouth for 60 seconds. It's going to activate the same muscles that as you're smiling. So those are the 3 actionable steps for you to get out of those states and really go into a positive peak performing state.
Oh, that's wonderful. Number 1, change your environment. Number 2, change your state, get into a power position. Number 3, do some breathing, because like you're right, doing that breathing activates your parasympathetic. So whatever your mind is up here, it's going to put you more in your body. You're going to bring that thing down. Beautiful stuff that you're dealing with. Now, let me ask you, when you're working with CEOs, when you're working with these C-suite people, what do you think? What are the common themes in terms of what most of them are working towards? Are they working towards, here's a funny thing. I was just speaking to, I forget his name, but he basically runs these big masterminds where they bring in like the very top people around. And what he found, when he told me, I found this so interesting. These are people that have built, 8-figure, 9-figure businesses or super celebrities creating movies. But one of the things that they found that most of them had was imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And very, very much so. And I'm wondering if you found the same thing, or if you found patterns that, so many of these C-suites or CEO people are going through as well.
Yeah, I love that question because it breaks it down to understanding that everybody, the base of it is a human being. That's what it comes down to. I really don't care. You're a CEO of a Fortune 500, beautiful. You're a homeless, beautiful. You're this, that, and the other. You're famous, you're not, beautiful. It's all human nature. So I've realized that one thing in itself, first of all, that imposter syndrome, you'd be surprised how many people are multimillionaires and still like, oh my God, how am I doing this? Am I good enough? So on and so forth. Everybody has that. You'd be surprised how many people have certain levels of stress. Like we mentioned, like you would think, oh, they have everything under control. No, they fight with this every single day. So that's the number one thing that I realized when I started working with these peak performing people that are already very high. And this is what I say, like, I don't take Honda Civics to make them into Ferraris. I take Ferraris to make them into F1s. That's just my clientele. That's perfectly okay. But even those people that are very high levels have doubts, have insecurities. But what happens, unfortunately, as individuals, as people, we look at people that we admire and we're like, oh my God, they're amazing. The Tony Robbins, the Beyoncés, the this, that, and the other of this world. But what's happening is we're comparing their step 75 to your step 17.
Yeah.
But the only thing you have to understand is they were at step 17. Go look at their stories. Go look at everybody went through it at a certain point. So if you're going through right now, it's a process. And even when you're at step 75, it's still a process to go to whatever is next level. But it's easy to look at Beyonce on stage and be like, oh my God, she's phenomenal. Look at her go. But she's been doing this for years. Not only that, still to this day after her show, she spends hours on watching her shows afterwards, what she could do, what she can improve. So understand that disconnect, that number one, we're one human being talking to another. And number two, stop comparing where you are to somebody else's where they are, because they were where you were. The only difference between that point and this one is putting in the work at a smart, intelligent way and living your true purpose towards it.
Yeah. And I think it's so important is just to be authentic with where you are in that path. And
yes,
you're authentic to that and not saying, hey, you're 90 when down you're 20. Being authentic with that, I think will help, right?
100%. Yeah. Like, just like, don't fake it. Like, I mean, if you're having insecurities, talk about it. If you're like, you know what, I'm starting this, I'm a new entrepreneur. I don't have to be like, oh my God, I'm balling, I'm this, that. No, if you're a new entrepreneur, talk about your new entrepreneur. Talk about what you don't know. Talk about what you know. Because as you talk about it, people will come out of the woodworks to help you. That's the honest truth. But if you're faking it, people will be like, oh, okay, he's got it, or he's this, that, and the other. No, just be authentic, 100%.
Super. I love getting into all these like tips and tricks because I feel like so many people in my audience will definitely resonate with that. One of the other things that I'd like to bring up, because, you know, I help a lot of people with their health, you know, they are saying sometimes they're fighting with procrastination. They're fighting with not desiring or not feeling the motivation to bring in more productivity or to start new habits. Is that something that, you know, the high level people that you're working with, do they deal with that? And then, you know, if so, what would be some approaches to kind of like, you know, get past procrastination or to maybe get a little bit more motivation?
So 100%, everybody deals with it in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, the high level people or anybody, they have a lot of things right, but they have certain things they have to optimize. So they could be succeeding extremely well in business, but their family life could be not going well. Maybe those two are great, but their fitness is not there. They're not healthy. Maybe they're healthy, but their bank account is completely empty. So it's understanding where you need to work on. Every single individual has something to work on and will always have something to work on. So 100%, that's the first thing. And to the second part to that question is what you could do to kind of change those habits and rituals. First and foremost is do something that's called the minimal viable effort.
Yeah.
Figure out what you need to do and start with baby steps. Don't necessarily go radical towards like, hey, you want to lose weight? Perfect. Don't start a diet right away. Don't start this. Don't start going to the gym 5 times a week. No, you have to be logical. Let's do once a week, maybe of walking. Let's just do, instead of starting the diet, let's just start increasing your quantity of water that you're drinking. Once you do that for a couple of weeks, let's add upon something else, because it gives enough time for that habit to really get engraved. Because what's happening in your mind, it's going from your prefrontal cortex to your basal ganglia. And that process could take anywhere between 18 to 256 days, pending what is the habit you're trying to implement and pending the person in itself. So that's understanding the biochemistry behind it and taking one step at a time. Because I rather somebody that's consistent over time, that's going to give you massive results, than somebody that's going to go super high and then super low and then super high. Then just playing roller coaster of a lifestyle. It's just not something that's going to succeed at a long way, essentially.
Amazing. I mean, such great tips today. We went through basically how to get more happiness, how to reduce stress, how to get off your ass and do stuff. Is there something that you would say is your signature thing that you'd love to share, like your golden nugget tip or whatever for people in terms of like how to improve or how to get to that next level in their life?
Honestly, I do not. Because I have so much, and I think it's a compound effect of everything, and we gave a lot over here. But if there's one thing I would speak to, that would be a Socrates quote, which Socrates obviously is a Greek philosopher, one of my favorite ones. And he says, the only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing. Now, I love that quote, and I truly live by that quote. So it's kind of crazy saying that, because I've been ranting for the last 20 minutes about my ideologies and my approaches and this and that. But if I have that ideology that I know absolutely nothing, the only thing that does is humbles you to understand there's always something to learn. Life is an everlasting, evolving educational process. And if you're that mindset of like, I am a lifetime learner, then you'll be always in lifetime growth, expansion, and you'll never be in decay. So the best thing I could tell people is always be humbled to learn, to develop yourself, because as you're challenging yourself, that's what will be a full life of fulfillment. So that's what I would speak to that.
Oh, beautiful. Now, before I get to my very last question, if people want to hire you as a coach, if people want to find you to speak, where do people find you?
Yeah, thank you for that. So honestly, best place to go check me out and see if there is any interest is on all social medias at Christopher Dedeyan. My family name is spelled Dedeyan. I go check out my YouTube channel. I have a lot of great content over there on my Instagram as well. And if you want to hire me or my team as a speaker or coach, go check out my website, DedeyanEnterprises.com, DedeyanEnterprises.com. And then you'll be able to see the speaking, the coaching side of things, some testimonials. Send us a little email through there and our team will connect with you and see how we could support you to go to the next level or your team to go to the next level.
That's beautiful. We'll make sure we include all of those things in the show notes. Last question for you. I mean, you've lived quite a life. You're, really kind of glowing right now, very magnetic, full of vitality. What has been your best medicine?
My best medicine. Great question. My best medicine actually would be two things: gratitude and massive level of clarity. Know who you are. Honestly, all answers are within. There's nothing outside. Turn within. You'll understand who you are, who you want to be, who you should be. And most of the times people know who they should be and what they should do. They just repress it, calling it out of practicality. And I used to do exactly the same thing. Like I said, I legitimately picked to become a fireman because I was afraid of reading. It's so crazy if you think about it. I rather run into a burning building than actually sit down and read. And now I'm at a level that I read more than a book a week. So that comes to inner clarity. So that's what I would speak to. Always living life optimistically with gratitude and always turning within. Everything is within. And once you go within, the answers outside will manifest by themselves.
Going within. Christopher Dedeyan, thank you for your time, brother. Thank you for delivering massive value to this audience.
Kien, it was my pleasure. And this is definitely a start of our friendship. I'm 100% sure.
All right.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if this podcast is bringing a lot of value to you, if you find that your life is just improving with this podcast, that your life is getting to the next level, please consider supporting it. And here's a few ways you can do so. You can do so by liking this video and commenting on this video, and also sharing this video with your friends and family. Another thing you can do is go to ratethispodcast.com/ThriveState. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star review there. It will really, really help this show grow. And this will give me more time so that I could actually give more content to you, just like you got in this episode. And if you haven't already picked up a copy of my book, Thrive State, Your Blueprint for Optimal Health, Longevity, and Peak Performance, you can pick it up now. It became a #1 new release in longevity. Go to thrivestatebook.com. And if you enjoy the book, please consider leaving us a review as well. And the last thing you can do, if you're liking everything here and you want to work more closely with me as well as my team to get you into the Thrive State, go to kienvu.com/accelerator and consider joining the home course, the Thrive State Accelerator. It's really the course that I use. It's the concepts that I use personally when I work with CEOs, celebrities, and my high-profile clients to get them to the Thrive State. Again, the Thrive State Accelerator at kienvu.com/accelerator. And because you're a listener of this podcast, I want you to save 25% by using the coupon code podcast25. I hope we continue to give value to you. And remember always, you are your best medicine.